Hopefully it's coming through. Welcome to this on Channel 23. This is the Mercy Weekly Meeting happening here at 1745 Capitol Street Northeast, beautiful downtown Salem, Oregon. And we are starting a little late this evening, so hopefully not too many folks are waiting around on the live stream to catch the show. If so, welcome. We hope it's worth the wait. Hope that the sound is coming through loud and clear, and all those fun things. If you could hold on for a moment, I'll bring up our news and information. For all the world to share. Of course, folks can always see it online at mercycenters.org. Also, come on down to the center Monday through Friday, noon to 6, and pick up your copy of the Oregon Cannabis Connection, or the Mercy newsletter, or the Willamette Valley Normal newsletter, or all three. Get the trifecta of liberty. Of course, as we said, you can also come down on Wednesdays from 7 to 9. We have the Mercy weekly meeting where you can get all the fun facts and more. You can speak with folks, those who are actually growing, those who are actually producing cannabis oils and medicines. And you can also find out about the latest action items. Also equip and armor yourself with voters registrations, with petition initiatives, and with all the other information as we talked about earlier, the Oregon Cannabis Connection, the Mercy newsletter, which has all the talking points on many of the legislative items that are happening. First off, we want to let folks know they should contact their U.S. representatives and tell them vote yes on hemp. It's very important, yes, even for the medical cannabis community, to have hemp allowed here, and not just in Oregon, but across America. So contact your U.S. representatives and say yes on hemp. Then contact your state representatives. First off, the good news, PTSD is going to be added to the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program. Compassionate Oregon Senate Bill 281 adds PTSD to the list of qualifying conditions with the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program, or OMMP. The law becomes effective January 1st, 2014. However, if patients apply before then, they and their grower and caregiver are protected until the application is denied, or so long as they possess the application of proof of mailing, are within limits, and don't do the things which cause one to lose the protection of the OMA, i.e. deal, sell, little things like that. Additionally, simply having an attending physician statement and being within the limits, etc., creates an affirmative defense. That's ORS 475.319, parentheses 1, by the way, for you legal folks who enjoy such things. Note, Oregon is the 8th state to recognize PTSD as a qualifying condition of the therapeutic use of medical cannabis. Also, MCS and PCS, the rescheduling of misdemeanor marijuana and hashish. Senate Bill 40 has passed both chambers and is awaiting the governor's signature next week. It has an emergency clause, so it will be effective once signed. The Oregon Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, or ODCLA, proposed reducing unlawful manufacturing of marijuana from an A felony to a B felony, and reducing possession from a B felony to a C felony, to conform with marijuana having been rescheduled from a Schedule I to a Schedule II controlled substance. One collateral effect of this is to make manufacturing expungible, although there is a 20-year wait. Compassionate Oregon proposed a misdemeanor marijuana provision between current violation and felony treatment of marijuana possession. Senate Bill 40 makes possession of less than 1 ounce of marijuana a Class B violation, reducing the fine to a maximum of $650. Makes possession of more than 1 ounce and less than 4 ounces a Class B misdemeanor, and more than 4 ounces a felony, now Class C. Prior law limited less than an ounce to exclude hashish, so that any amount of hashish was a felony. SB 40 makes any amount under 1/4 of an ounce of hashish or hash oil or honey oil or other extracts a Class B misdemeanor. Any amount over 1/4 of an ounce is a Class C felony, whereas before any amount was a felony by federal law. Oregon is the 35th state to have a misdemeanor marijuana and the 8th state to have a misdemeanor hashish law. Number 3, the mostly no more driver's license suspension for conviction of a violation less than an ounce. Senate Bill 82 has passed both chambers and is awaiting the governor's signature next week. It has an emergency clause, so it will be effective once signed. The OCDLA proposed removing the mandatory with a substantial reason not to safe harbor for 6 months driver's license suspension for the conviction of the violation of less than an ounce of marijuana. After the Senate approved this change, the House continued to require suspensions of those under 18. However, it is also required there be a showing and judicial findings that the suspension is necessary for the protection of the public. The Senate concurred with this amendment. Number 4. There was lobbying primarily by the Sugarman Group, Jeff Sugarman and Sam Chapman, for House Bill 3460, which has passed the House and is pending a Senate vote and the governor's signature, both of which are expected. Still, folks should contact their senators and make sure they're voting on House Bill 3460 in the Oregon State Senate. HB 3460 adds a 4th cardholder to the OMMA's registry identification cardholder system called a medical marijuana facility. It permits patients who actually own all produced medicine to authorize their grower to sell or be fully reimbursed for any excess medicine produced in excess of the patient's needs to any medical marijuana facility, which in turn can sell or be fully reimbursed by, unquote, any licensed patient or caregiver. There are many restrictions on facilities, including siting more than 1,000 feet from a school or other facility, and the OHA is authorized to promulgate rules regarding them, which authority they are expected to exercise. The effective date is March 1st, 2014. However, Section 9, in parentheses 3, creates an affirmative defense for facilities which are otherwise in compliance with the provisions of this law at this time. At the very least, this bill is going to create questions about the continuing viability of prosecutions in Malheur, Jackson, Lane, and unindicted cases in Washington counties. So again, call your Oregon State Senator, tell them vote yes on HB 3460. Number 5, limiting presumptive prison for pot. The Governor's Commission on Public Safety's bill HB 3194 emerged in the governor's office significantly gutted, including the removal of some restrictions on the mandatory minimums for BM11 cases. For marijuana, however, some limited sentencing modifications remain. The bill has passed the House and is pending a Senate vote and the governor's signature, both of which are expected. Essentially, the sentencing changes are these. Although the unlawful possession, delivery, or manufacture of marijuana can still be prosecuted as a commercial drug offense, the possession factors, more than 110 grams of marijuana or more than 8 grams of hashish, are repealed. Additionally, the unlawful possession, delivery, or manufacture of marijuana can no longer be prosecuted within the sentencing designation of substantial quantities, as those provisions are repealed as well. These changes leave only within the 1,000 feet of a school and delivery to a minor as presumptive prison sentences upon conviction as both remaining level 8 offenses. The effective date is August 1st, 2013, as a first sentencing date, which is to say cases sentenced before then and scheduled for resentencing would not get the benefit of these changes. Item number 6, bills which are probably going to die this session. 2 bills which had hearings but were not voted on in either chamber are Senate Bill 794 and House Bill 3371. SB 794 would have provided modest OMA reform by allowing reciprocity up to an ounce and by ending the requirement that patients designate a grow site when they have no intention of growing themselves. Law enforcement had significant unaddressed concerns with the OMMA, which may come back in an omnibus OMMA bill in a short session in February 2014, kind of like Senate Bill 1085 did back in 2005. House Bill 3371, a well-funded and well-drafted comprehensive tax and regulate effort, remains hopeful for referral to the November 2014 general election from the February 2014 session, especially if the tax provision can be amended to make sure we would have a viable infused products industry. The current proposal calls for a tax on the producers by weight, which raises concern about the cost effectiveness of marketing, leaves lower quality plant products used for edible cannabis infused products. Signature gathering efforts on a constitutional amendment and a revised tax and regulate proposal, both of which were vetted during the 2012 campaign, are also underway. So all in all, this has been an epic session. We were very pleased, very fortunate, we believe, to get PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, added, and we're hoping that we can turn that into a positive change onto the system. It is unfortunate that we had to go through the legislative process to get PTSD added, and the system needs to be fixed so that not every group of patients who needs to have a condition added has to go through this process. So hopefully we will see positive long-term big picture change as a result of the addition of PTSD to the medical marijuana program. But that will be up to you, the people out there, to make sure that happens. So we talked about the legislative things happening here in Oregon, also across the U.S. We have federal bills in play. Also, a number of states also have initiatives and the like happening. Also, good news in Nevada. Governor authorizes creation of medical cannabis dispensaries. Senate Bill 374 authorizing the creation of up to 66 medical marijuana production and distribution facilities. Under the new law, state regulators will oversee the creation of licensed establishments to produce, test, and dispense cannabis and cannabis-infused products to authorized patients. Nevada voters enacted a state constitutional amendment in 2000 mandating state lawmakers to allow for physicians to authorize qualified patients to consume and grow cannabis. However, that law did not provide for facilities where patients may obtain medical cannabis. Approximately 3,800 Nevadans are presently authorized to grow and or consume cannabis under state law. Senate Bill 374 imposes limits on the home cultivation of cannabis if patients reside within 25 miles of an operating dispensary. However, patients who are cultivating specific strains of cannabis not provided by a local dispensary may continue to engage in the home cultivation of such strains. Patients who have an established history of cultivating medical cannabis prior to July 2013 may also continue to do so until March 31st, 2016. The bill also amends possession limits from 1 ounce to 2 1/2 ounces and increases plant cultivation limits from 3 mature plants to 12. So it sounds like a good positive change, if complicated. The one about being able to grow, if it's specific strains not produced by the dispensary, is an interesting one. Now that would be definitely qualified. It'd have to be from DNA test to say if this is really the same strain. And who's going to pay for that, I wonder? So Nevada to have dispensaries. In Colorado, the governor signs into law regulating commercial hemp production. Democrat Governor John Hickenlooper signed legislation, Senate Bill 241, into law, creating a new program within the Department of Agriculture to oversee the regulation of commercial hemp production. Unlike similar laws enacted in other states, the Senate bill does not mandate farmers seeking state-issued hemp cultivation licenses to first gain federal approval. Federal legislation, the Industrial Hemp Farming Act of 2013, to amend the Controlled Substances Act to exclude industrial hemp from the definition of marijuana, is currently pending before Congress. So contact your U.S. representatives, please. Visit mercycenters.org to find out how. See all the links. Vermont becomes 17th state to end criminal sanctions for marijuana possession offenses. Study: hemp seed oil associated with improved clinological and immunological parameters in multiple sclerosis or MS patients. This comes out of Tabriz, Iran. The consumption of hemp seed nutritional oil in conjunction with the intake of evening primrose oils and a restricted diet high in non-natured foods such as pepper and low in saturated fats and sugars is associated with significant improvement in symptom management and immunological characteristics in subjects with multiple sclerosis or MS, according to clinical trial data published in the current issue of the scientific journal Bioimpacts. In Michigan, Supreme Court rules that Medical Marijuana Act exempts patients from zero tolerance per se driving law.
Yay.
Good. Yes, sirree. The Michigan Supreme Court has determined that state-authorized medical cannabis patients possess legal protections from criminal prosecution in cases involving the internal possession of THC while driving. In a unanimous opinion in People versus Kuhn, the court determined that patients who are compliant with the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act may not be criminally convicted of being under the influence absent evidence of behavioral impairment. Michigan traffic laws classify the operation of a motor vehicle with any amount of THC in one system to be a criminal offense, regardless of whether or not they are impaired by the substance. So thank heavens that the patients have got this exemption for this ridiculously illogical zero tolerance provision. Perhaps they can get the same exemption in Washington State, where the patients are subject to the 5 nanogram limit recently imposed as part of the legalization effort up there. Well, here's a bit of information that may or may not be news to folks. The black arrest rate for marijuana offenses is 4 times that of whites. Is that a surprise to anybody? Anybody?
No.
Yep, that's pretty much common knowledge. Also in Colorado, governor signs first in the nation legislation authorizing retail cannabis production and sales. Woo! Field trip! State licensed cannabis retailers are expected to be approved under the new law by early 2014. Marijuana retailers must be California residents. So much for packing up our truck with a bunch of cannabis, and as soon as we hit the Colorado border, throw up our little canopy and have the roadside.
I thought this was California.
Well, this is Colorado.
Oh.
But marijuana retailers must be Colorado residents. However, cannabis sales will be permitted to anyone over age 21, including non-residents.
Yay. So they'll treat it like alcohol.
Yes. Majority will decide on proposed tax rates, commercial cannabis production, and retail sales this fall. Tasked the state with establishing regulations for the plant's retail production and sale of cannabis to the public. I think a significant thing about the Colorado law is that it allows for personal grows. And so that's a great thing, that individuals can plant their own cannabis garden without having to justify, come up with a reason. I mean, it's their freaking right. And now folks will be held accountable for the things they're responsible for, and not simply for the existence of marijuana. Okay, Nevada we already talked about. Oregon, we talked about. Student drug testing programs linked to spikes in hard drug use. Schools that institute student drug testing programs are likely to experience a rise in students' consumption of so-called hard drugs, according to observational trial data published this month in the Journal of Adolescent Health. Researchers at the University of Michigan Institute for Social Research analyzed the impact of student drug testing programs in some 250,000 high school and middle school students over a 14-year period. Investigators reported that random drug testing programs of the student body, as well as programs specifically targeting student athletes, were associated with moderately lower marijuana use, but that these drug testing programs overall were associated with increased use of illicit drugs other than marijuana. An estimated 14% of middle school students and 28% of U.S. high school students are now subject to some form of drug testing. Urinalysis, the most common form of student drug testing, screens for the presence of inert drug metabolites, breakdown products, not the actual parent drug. Because marijuana's primary metabolite, carboxy-THC, is fat soluble, it may be present in the urine for days, weeks, or even in some cases months after past use. By contrast, most other illicit drug metabolites are water soluble and will exit the body within a matter of hours. Authors of the study speculated that students subject to drug screens are switching from cannabis to other illicit drugs that possessed shorter detection times. This is the same scenario that happened up in Alaska during the pipeline. They started to institute this drug testing because it was federal, and of course focused on the cannabis, marijuana, and just like these students, all the workers there shifted to cocaine and heroin, methamphetamines, other things like that, speed, because those were less detectable than cannabis. So the only thing that it did was push people over to the harder drugs. The drug testing program was the biggest gateway to hard drugs. So it didn't decrease general cannabis use among the overall student body, but especially in those cases, the targeted groups like student athletes definitely had the adverse effect of long-term increased harder drug use. Another reason why we should end the war on cannabis. Period. Now, as we were saying before, cannabis for patients with post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic stress disorder. And this one here talks about the cannabinoids in particular. Investigators at the New York University School of Medicine reported that subjects diagnosed with PTSD typically possessed elevated quantities of endogenous cannabinoid receptors in regions of the brains associated with fear and anxiety. Investigators also determined that many of these subjects experienced a decrease in their natural production of anandamide, an endogenous cannabinoid neurotransmitter, resulting in an imbalanced endocannabinoid regulatory system. Researchers speculated that an increase in the body's production of cannabinoids would likely restore the subject's natural brain chemistry and psychological balance. They affirmed, our findings substantiate, at least in part, emerging evidence that plant-derived cannabinoids such as marijuana may possess some benefits in individuals with PTSD by helping relieve haunting nightmares and other symptoms of PTSD. Well, hopefully we've evidenced that here in Oregon. We did get the law passed here, and as we stated earlier, it will take effect January 1st. At that time, PTSD will be one of the conditions you can get your card for here in Oregon. Another survey, most Americans back industrial hemp cultivation. "56% of Americans, according to data released last week by YouGov.com and the Huffington Post. So vote hemp, folks. Call your representatives. Tell them, vote hemp. Over 90% of Americans oppose jailing marijuana possession offenders. Illinois, lawmakers authorize medical marijuana pilot program. Yeehaw, we're moving to Illinois, son. House Bill 1 to establish a pilot program regulating the state licensed production and dispensing of therapeutic cannabis to qualified patients. The measure now awaits action from Democrat Governor Pat Quinn, who recently stated publicly that he is open-minded about the legislation.
Who'll be growing the medicine for them?
Signed into law, Illinois will become the 19th state since 1996 to allow for authorized patients to possess and consume cannabis. The Compassionate Use of Medical Cannabis Pilot Program Act allows for state-registered patients to possess up to 2.5 ounces of cannabis over a 14-day period. Patients must possess a physician's recommendation, be diagnosed with one of some 40 debilitating medical conditions such as cancer, HIV, multiple sclerosis, or fibromyalgia, and must not possess a felony drug conviction to participate in the program. Under the proposal, patients will not be permitted to cultivate their own cannabis. Rather, the measure requires patients to obtain cannabis from one of 60 proposed state licensed dispensaries. These facilities will be supplied by 22 state authorized cultivation centers. The Illinois Department of Agriculture, Department of Health, and Department of Financial and Professional Regulation will oversee the program. If signed into law, the pilot program will officially take effect on January 1st, 2014. Because the measure contains a sunset provision, it will expire in 4 years from this date unless lawmakers act to extend it. So that's the gritty and the nitty on the Illinois program. Let's see. We have some questions here in the chat room. As a property owner leasing space to cannabis freedom fighters, can I become a target of federal drug lords threatening to shut me down? There have been letters sent out by the Department of Justice to landlords who hosted medical cannabis facilities be they clinics who help folks get their card, a dispensary type operation, or even in some cases simply nonprofit who's giving out information and networking people together. To date, the actual paperwork to forfeit the property has not been filed except in the one case in California, the Harborside. The DOJ actually followed up and filed paperwork to begin asset forfeiture proceedings. But good news, bad news. Yes, you could become the target. Is the bad news. The good news is that it's a very much paper tiger so far. And if you do get one of these letters, please contact us at the Mercy Center, and we'll put you in touch with attorneys who have experience in dealing with these cases. So for all you landlords out there, please don't be afraid to lease your to medical cannabis activists just because it's cannabis. You might want to review the processes that the tenants are going to go through. You do want to make sure as much as possible that no illicit activity is indeed going on, whether your tenants are being overly optimistic as far as interpreting the law, or just being wheeler dealers. However, there is no provisions in the OMA, just the federal law, which is opposed to cannabis at all. So no one's going to win with the feds and appease them. So folks that are expecting some kind of approval from that, we're not going to get it until we end the war. So again, if you're a landlord and you're thinking about leasing to medical cannabis facilities, please feel free to call the Mercy Center and go over laws, rules, regulations, standard operating procedures, things like that. Also, if you're thinking about being a medical cannabis facility at any level, whether you're just starting to do clinics or hand out information, just help people get their cards, or you want to help people to get growing, to do their own gardens, things like that. Please check with the resources that we've listed on our pages, web pages especially, which you can come down and get an Oregon Cannabis Connection and get in the network. I mean, even things such as your insurance, your premises insurance, even if you're not going to be having any cannabis on the premises, even if you're not going to be a facility with requires an extra level of insurance, you're at least going to need to get that premises insurance. And even here, you're going to want to deal with folks who are familiar with that. So please give us a call if you need that insurance. You want accounting resources, if you want legal resources, all those things that folks need, whether at the individual level to make sure of your own personal situation, or it's only 34 minutes.
Well, we started late.
So we're just going to do a half-hour show tonight? Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to be wrapping up pretty soon. So again, folks, give us a call, contact us through the internet, come on down and visit, whether you're a patient looking to get started, or you're someone who wants to grow for folks, if you want to do an organization of patients, start as a nonprofit, set up and go, or if you're looking to do some kind of commercial venture. We help folks on the issue, we network to resources, and all the things that need to be done here in the cannabis community to effectively change the law and see to it that there's some long-term, big picture solutions for folks. But that's all we're going to have time for tonight, and we say toodles to folks in Channel 23 land for now. See you next time on Mercy TV.
Thank you.
Folks out there in video land,
You want to say anything before I turn it off, Glenn?
Yes, good night.
Good night. God bless you all, every single one of you.